Minecraft is one of those timeless games that everyone has played, not just because it's popular, but because it can run on almost anything that can turn on. And the Nintendo Switch is no exception. So today we're talking about Minecraft on the Switch and the current state of it, because despite being one of the best-selling third-party games on the system, and the best-selling game in the literal world, this version is kind of a mess. So why is Minecraft on Nintendo Switch considered one of the worst versions of this game to date? Seriously, I've seen criticism after criticism of this port, some of it in my own comment section. So I figured it was time to see for myself. And trust me, I pushed it to its limits. If this thing had a breaking point, I was going to find it, even if it meant sacrificing my sanity in the process. Also, just to clarify, I'll be playing the new Bedrock edition, not the older Nintendo Switch edition, because trust me, that makes a difference. At this point, you already know how to play Minecraft, so I don't need to go super in depth on the mechanics. When you boot up Minecraft, you get a few options. You can either play in survival, creative, servers for playing with other people, and adventures, aka the stuff you can purchase via the marketplace. So we'll be looking at all these modes just to see exactly how broken they are on the Nintendo Switch. Let's take a look at survival mode, but before we can even do that, we need to log into our Microsoft account. But this is something I hate doing and is required on every version of Minecraft. You have to sign in with your Microsoft account almost every single time you open the game. Sometimes it remembers your login, but I swear, 90% of the time I launch the game, I have to log back in, and it's just such a pain. Other games like Fortnite handle this so much better. You just link your Nintendo Switch, PlayStation, or Xbox to your Epic Games account, and it automatically signs in based on the console account you're playing on. I don't know why Microsoft still can't figure this out. This is literally the best-selling game of all time. How is something this basic, this broken? And before you say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, no! It is that big of a deal. You need to sign in if you want to play online, access anything you bought in the marketplace, or even use your own skins. It's not just a mild inconvenience, it's essential to playing the game properly. And to make it even worse, it's not just a simple login. No, first I have to scan a QR code, then I have to check my email for a security code, then I have to jump between my inbox, a web browser, and my console just to maybe get in. It's exhausting, and at this point, I'm just so over it. Having such a broken login process every time you want to play is just frustrating. And the worst part, it's been like this for years. Microsoft has had so much time to fix this, but no, still every single time for every Minecraft game in general, I need to log into my Microsoft account anytime I boot up the game. Also, when I opened the game, the menu was kind of tweaking. It showed me some Transformers icon in the marketplace and then just broke. What's happening here? But after actually starting a brand new survival world and doing the basics like mining, chopping down trees, and fighting bad, silly enemies, I could already start to see some of the major flaws of the Switch version. See, right before I started playing the Switch, I tried out the PS5 version, and everything was absolutely seamless. Now, obviously, the PS5 is extremely faster than the Switch. That's not even up for debate, but it's interesting to see just how different these two versions run in comparison. The Nintendo Switch version is definitely good enough when you first start off a new world. On top of that, I'm happy to say that the frame rate actually runs at 60 frames per second, which is a rare feat for third-party games on Switch. A lot of third-party developers just cut the frame rate down to 30 frames per second just to prevent it from doing this. It's not completely perfect though. Even though the Switch version technically runs at 60 frames per second, there's a constant stutter in the frame rate that's hard to ignore. And keep in mind, I had just started a brand new world, and it was already happening. This usually kicks in when you do things like chop down trees or mine, which yes, happens very often in this game. No matter what you're doing, you can just tell the game is always stuttering. It's most likely due to all the mobs spawning everywhere and particles from blocks breaking, and of course, the game struggling to load new chunks of the world, which is another huge problem. Most of the time, as you're casually walking around, minding your own business, the world just straight up doesn't generate at all. I could be walking into a section of the map I already loaded, and somehow it needs to generate again. It's so bad that half the time, the train won't even generate before I reach the unloaded section. Or sometimes when you're on foot or using a horse or something, you'll just randomly stop because a tree that didn't spawn in time magically appears right in front of you. You don't even need to be moving fast for this to happen. Sometimes you'll just be walking and the game will halt your movement because something invisible suddenly decides to pop into reality. And to make it worse, sometimes you get accidental X-ray vision into the ground, letting you see caves and tunnels through the terrain, which would be cool if I was trying to cheat, but I'm literally just trying to walk. On top of that, as I mentioned, the draw distance is pretty low. It's not so low that it makes the game unplayable, but it's definitely noticeable compared to other consoles. This is mostly a big deal because it prevents you from seeing valuable things in the distance, like animals or villages. It's just kind of a pain when the render distance fog is covering something that you know you'd normally be able to see on other versions of the game. Now, this is coming from someone who had just played the PS5 version, which has like 38 chunks of render distance. So yeah, compared to the 12 on Nintendo Nintendo Switch, it's pretty low. But the worst part of this version is actually playing it long term, because in the late game, when you have a massive village, a farm full of animals and crops, and a well thought out base, it can literally get unplayable. A couple of years ago, I no-lifed this game with my wife. We built this massive village. We had this whole villager apartment complex where they would live their best lives and breed the day away. We also had a huge farm where, once again, everyone's one and only purpose in life seemed to be making babies. It took a long time to build, but it was a lot of fun to make. This is what Minecraft is all about, slowly chipping away at a massive world while discovering new parts of the map and constantly fighting for your life. But on the Switch, it plays like garbage. Yes, this is mostly because the sheer amount of mobs in my village, and sure, technically if I went on a full-blown slaughter spree and wiped out half the villagers and animals, it'd probably run a little better. I don't want to do that, and I shouldn't have to. There were even simple things I wanted to do on the Switch that just didn't work properly, especially when I was in an area with buildings and a lot of mobs. Things like opening menus became a chore, forcing me to sit there and wait for them to actually load. Even something as basic as talking to a villager or opening up my own inventory needed a load screen. And sometimes when I loaded into a new area, I'd get massive frame spikes, to the point where I'd just stand there waiting to see if the game was about to crash or not. A real-life Minecraft survival experience. And let's not forget about some of the sound effects being delayed by half a minute sometimes. Once again, this is why you shouldn't put mounds of cattle on a Nintendo Switch console. Another issue I've seen a lot of people talk about online is the load times of the Switch version. Now, to be fair, these aren't usually a big deal on their own. I don't mind waiting to get into a game, and I can even tolerate the longer load times when traveling to the end or the nether. But what does bother me is that sometimes the game takes so long to load in that you can actually get killed before you spawn in, meaning you might load in just in time to watch your inventory explode into a million pieces. So hopefully you weren't just in the middle of a long quest out in the wilderness somewhere, because good luck getting all your stuff back. Now, to be fair, this isn't just a Switch problem. I've seen reports of this happening on other consoles too, but since the Switch takes even longer to load, it's an even bigger risk. So before you shut the game off, make sure you're somewhere safe, because if you log back in and instantly die, that is now on you. So just for fun, I booted up the same world on my PS5 to see if it was really the Switch's fault or if I had somehow just bugged out the game. And I can confirm, yes, this is the Switch's fault. And again, even without a massive mob population, the game still has plenty of technical problems. It still has a constant frame rate stutter. It still loads in chunks way too late, sometimes right as you're stepping into them, and the render distance is still low. But if you can ignore the micro stutters, I think most of the other issues are livable, assuming you don't share my addiction to populate a village as big as mine with a villager army. Most of the time, the game is playable, and I wouldn't say this version is completely worthless or anything. Now, let's move on to creative mode. Well, most of the same problems are still here. The micro stutter, the weird chunk loading issue, and the environment randomly despawning and respawning around you. The game mode did not change this. I don't have too much to say about creative mode other than the fact that it's just as easy to break the game here. It's honestly kind of impressive. Now, naturally, the first thing I did was the tried and true TNT test, which yes, did break the game, but it was able to get a hold of itself pretty fast. But it really makes me wonder, why recently in the last 3 or 4 years have I heard that this version has been so bad? I remember back when the game first launched on Switch, these huge technical issues weren't even a thing. You see, it never used to be this bad, but since its release, they've added a lot to the game. Not only did they make the world sizes unlimited and add cross-platform play with anyone, but they also made sure every new update gets pushed to the Switch on the same day as every other platform. And well, turns out the Switch doesn't like that. These updates have been massive. I think one of the biggest ones that really affected this version was the Caves and Cliffs update. Now, I can't prove this, but ever since that update, the Switch version has felt like a noticeable downgrade when I've been playing in survival or creative mode. The map generation became way more advanced, and the maximum depth of the world was expanded. Even past that, they've added a ton of new content, and in general, the Minecraft team has just been piling on new features in recent years. Now, not nearly as many as like Fortnite, but I mean, they are still updating the game, which is respectable. But as they've kept adding more and more to the game, kind of forgot to optimize the Switch version for all these upgrades, which in my opinion is why we see things like painfully low chunk loading. And on top of that, let's be honest, the Switch isn't exactly winning any awards for raw power. I love the little guy, but at this point, it's basically running on pure determination. Another major part of Minecraft is the servers. Now, going into this, I fully expected the Switch to jump out of the dock in the moment I tried to load one. I mean, with all the players running around and the additional content packs it needed to download beforehand, I was convinced this was going to be a disaster. But surprisingly, these multiplayer servers weren't half bad. The frame rate might chug a bit, but for the most part, it was a pretty solid experience. And speaking of servers, when people run Minecraft Realm servers, which are basically just private worlds that people pay for, it actually prevents a lot of the loading issues that happens when running worlds natively on the Switch. This is most likely because the external servers are just faster than the Switch itself. Now, I don't have have a Realm server anymore, but I do remember that back when I did a few years ago, my survival map wasn't nearly as bad as it was when it was running locally on the Switch. It's interesting that it's conveniently solved by paying Microsoft on a monthly basis. What's the deal with that? Minecraft also has the marketplace, which a lot of PC gamers scoff at because, well, they can just download way cooler stuff for free with mods. But for us console gamers, this is the best we got. It's very similar to Roblox or Fortnite, where creators can make maps. The difference here is that instead of them being free like in Fortnite, you have to spend money on mine coins. Yes, Minecraft has its own currency. And yes, you can use it to buy some questionable stuff from the marketplace. Now, what actually makes the marketplace somewhat bearable is the fact that a lot of maps are made by big name companies like Sonic the Hedgehog, SpongeBob, even Disney. But just because these maps are made by official companies doesn't mean the Switch version isn't completely broken when playing them. Every single map I bought and played on the Switch has had its own issues. And don't get me wrong, I love these maps. They're super cool and genuinely unique. They actually make me forget that I paid for a map in Minecraft. They all have custom textures, music, character packs, skin packs, gameplay mechanics, everything that makes them feel like their own kind of game. Take the SpongeBob map, for example. For the most part, it's solid, but the frame rate is constantly under 60 frames per second, and in some sections, it's below 30 frames per second. While it's definitely playable, a lot of this map just isn't optimized well. Then there's the Disney map. It's a wonderful recreation of the most magical place on Earth. It has characters from the beloved Disney movies. It faithfully recreates the rides, but once again, the frame rate is consistently low. The draw distance was especially disappointing in this one. Things would just pop in way too late, and there were subtle things that made the game hitch, like these fireworks, and it got so bad that the audio wasn't even synced up properly with them. Oh, and let's not forget about the rides. Once again, most of the rides were fun to experience, but often tanked the frame rate, and heck, one of them even made the game crash. But the worst one of all, the Sonic map. This one was literally unplayable in certain parts. I was so excited for this map. It looked amazing and ran really well on my PS5, but how bad could it be on the Switch? Well, you know how Sonic is supposed to go fast? Yeah, well, if you go too fast in the Switch version, you literally can't see the path ahead of you because the game can't load in fast enough. This is actually unplayable. And on top of that, you've got the usual frame rate drops and you get the rest. Don't get me wrong, all these maps are really cool and I'm glad I can at least try to play them on the Switch, but the reality is a lot of these maps are simply too big for the system to handle. Okay, maybe I'm being a little dramatic. The Switch can handle them, just with a few flaws. But still, I think this is just the state Minecraft is in right now. With the way updates are going and the direction the game is moving, it's starting to feel like it's too big for the Nintendo Switch. Now, I don't think it's going anywhere, but I do think the developers need to release a patch of some sort because some of these issues are just not okay. The map loading problems, the frame rate spikes, those are big issues and they desperately need to be fixed. To be fair, when you max out a world with 2.9 million farm animals and villagers, probably not even the PS5 could handle that to a certain degree. So I do have to apologize for my expectations just being too high, I guess. I guess the problem is that the game lets me break it. Some younger players might not even realize what they did to break the game. Older versions of Minecraft on console used to limit the mobs for this exact reason, but now there's nothing stopping you from creating a farm with literally unlimited animals. But you know what I think would help my Nintendo Switch? If you joined the Vandies. By becoming a member, you support my ongoing mission to play games that constantly test my patience. In return, you get exclusive content, early video access, and other really cool perks, like having your name at the end of the video. Plus, you'll directly be funding my therapy sessions after forcing myself to play Minecraft on the Nintendo Switch for this long. So please hit the join button or click the first link in the description and become a Vandy. Anyway, back to the video. The Nintendo Switch also has some unique features that not many other versions have, like the touchscreen capabilities. If you're playing in handheld mode, I found this to be pretty helpful, especially when navigating menus or crafting. It's surprisingly fast and makes things a little more intuitive. I was also surprised to find out that the Switch version supports up to 4-player split screen, and honestly, it's not as bad as you might think. Considering everything else barely runs, it's actually shockingly optimized. Now, all the players will need a Pro Controller or a pair of Joy-Cons, so you can't just use one Joy-Con. Oh, and speaking of Joy-Cons, they're not the best to play with because the sticks are so small and dinky. I eventually did get used to it, and it's better than no sticks. Another thing I found weird about the control scheme is that by default, the controls make A the jump button instead of B. Yeah, the A and B buttons are swapped, and I hate it. I did eventually swap them back to the way they should be, but the fact that this is default is just kind of weird. For me, the main charm of the Switch version is its portability. This same version of the game is also available on mobile, and if you've seen my video where I compare the two, you'll know the mobile version is actually superior depending on what phone you have. But regardless of all the criticisms I've thrown at it, I still have almost 150 hours in this game. I've played it a ton, and with that many hours, I can't sit here and say it's unplayable, because it's not. For all its flaws, there's still so much about this version that's great. Even though I do have other consoles I could play it on, there's just something about this version that feels cool. It gives me that OG Switch magic, the feeling of playing a full console game anywhere I want, which these days is kind of old news. It's good to have that feeling every once in a while. Minecraft on the Nintendo Switch is a weird version of the game. It's a mix of joy and bad. On one hand, it's incredible that you can take a full version of Minecraft anywhere and play it on a dedicated gaming console and not just mobile. There's something about playing Minecraft on the go that just feels right, and despite all of the technical problems, I still find myself coming back to it. But on the other hand, this version is broken. The frame drops, the stuttering, the chunk loading issues, and the game straight up not generating terrain in time is rough. And let's not forget that logging in is essential to every time you play, and you must do it every time you boot up the game, and it goes through all the web browser and the emails. Oh, it's such a pain, and it annoys me every single time. The process for logging into your Microsoft account just isn't seamless, and I absolutely hate it, and I don't know why it's necessary or why it doesn't just keep you logged in. Yet despite all of that, I still love this version, and I put way too many hours into it to pretend otherwise. So is the Nintendo Switch the best way to play Minecraft? Absolutely not. But is it broken? There are broken things about it, but it's not unplayable. And listen, if you can look past its flaws, then it might be worth checking out. Only if you only have a Nintendo Switch. Even if Minecraft on the Switch is still broken, it's still Minecraft. Once again, consider becoming a channel member and click this video if you want to see me play every Minecraft game on the Nintendo Switch. I hope to see you in the next one. See you later.